everybody. Thank you for joining us for Adult Forum. It was taped live in church. You'll notice, however, that being in room 1, we did pick up some of the ambient noise of our wonderful worshiping fellowship down the hall. So just calling your attention to that. In the future, we will probably have adult forums in the sanctuary, which should be a quieter atmosphere, not just for the participants, but for you as well. So bear with us. I hope you can hear most of the conversation. I did edit out some of the sharing that was just really too hard to hear. So turn up the volume a little bit, do your best, and hopefully the future videos will be of higher quality. Have a good day. So, Adult Forum is here. We can just briefly say hi to those who are gathered. A little wave.
And Mary will be coming.
Yeah, we'll have maybe one or two, and I think what we'll do, kind of 2 parts. We work with the scripture a little bit. We work with sort of the theme. Today was kind of like, what beliefs did you download? And we'll just go where we need to go. And if we want to spend more time on scripture, we will. If we want to spend more time on the topic, we do what you feel we need to do. So we'll start at Genesis 27, and maybe we'll fill in some of the gaps. As you probably guessed, they hopscotched a little bit just to make it not so long. So you miss a little bit of the drama. So we start at Genesis 27, and does anybody want to read strongly and just kind of go through, what should we go through? 23, 1 through 23?
Sure.
Thank you.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son," and he answered, "Here I am." He said, "See, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow. Go out into the field and hunt game for me. Then prepare for me savory food such as I like and bring it to me to eat so I may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when he saw him in the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me game and prepare for me savory food to eat that I may bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my word as I command you. Go to the flock and get me 2 choice kids, so that I may prepare for them savory food for your father, such as he likes. Then you shall take it to your father to eat, so he may bless you before he dies.' But Jacob said to his mother Rebekah, 'Look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I'm a man of smooth skin. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall see me mocking him and bring a curse on myself and not a blessing.' His mother said to him, 'Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my word. Go, get them for me.' So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared savory food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. And she put the skins of the kids on his hands and the smooth part of his neck. Then she handed the savory food and the bread that she had prepared to her son Jacob. So he went into his father and said, 'My father.' And he said, 'Here I am. Who are you, my son?' Jacob said to his father, 'I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game so you may bless me.' But Isaac said to his son, 'How is it you have found it so quickly, my son?' He answered, 'Because the Lord your God granted me success.' And Isaac said to Jacob, 'Come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not.' So Jacob went up to his father Isaac and felt him and said, 'The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau.' He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. He said, 'Are you really my son Esau?' And he answered, 'I am.'"
All right. Yeah, so the rest of the story kind of unfolds, but one of the pieces that I wanted to read was how really Rebekah was encouraging Jacob to go through with this, and how interestingly that sets up the family dynamic
Right.
of
Why? Like,
yeah.
she just liked Jacob better? I don't get it. And
Yeah.
as a mother, how do you like one of your children more than the other?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe she felt that her husband was being unfair by only blessing the oldest and wanted the same for the youngest as well.
I honestly believe that it's interesting the way family dynamics go, because even in our family, our grandma liked my oldest sister the most. So for that, my mother compromised a different way, and this thing got to be this deal. The dysfunctional stuff's been going on for a long time ever since.
I feel like, yeah, like some mothers' favorites are the ones that nobody else likes, you know, because like, well, they get a, you know, these kids get attention from aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas, but nobody really likes this, so then they focus on the one that's kind of not liked as much.
And sometimes there's the child who feels like he's being slighted by the parent, especially if the parent is compensating for, I mean, if one kid has special needs or is needing a lot more help from the parents, and so the parents are focusing on that kid because this kid is got a little bit more together, but then that kid feels slighted, and I know in my family line there have been favorites for those who had to get it more versus the other ones, and it's not been fair. And but yeah, in the story, it's one thing that strikes me too is that I mean, he is blessing the child named Esau, even though it's another kid that received the blessing. So it's like, I don't know how that blessing works, so to speak, if he blessed the wrong person, but at the same time that person was claiming to be Esau, so by proxy isn't he still blessing Esau? And how does, if Jacob then goes running off, then Esau still gets the blessing by default just because Jacob's not there to take all the property and...
That's like supposed to have to go to probate.
Right, like, is this just how the system worked, like in Hebrew families? Is this what you did? You blessed your oldest son? Is that what it is?
I think so.
Yeah, there was
What does
that.
even mean?
Yeah, so the oldest son is the one who gets the stuff by
You need to get stuff.
you get that, but also there was that tradition that you give a blessing. So you have the inheritance, and then you get a special blessing. And there was just that idea that what's done cannot be undone when it comes to words, because words are almost like in a good way, it's almost like a spell. I mean, sometimes we think of spells as negative, but it's words with power is what they are. They believed words had power, and that's why they never said the name of God, because they thought that would be so like beyond what they were allowed to do. So basically, when Esau blesses, or when Isaac blesses Jacob, that cannot be undone. And then we see later how when Esau finds out, they're all upset. Isaac and Esau are upset, and he gives him a lesser blessing. He still blesses him, but he can't undo what he's done. But I think what you mentioned is it's there that families have favoritism issues. They have even if it's not favoritism, it could be you learned a certain behavior from one parent or another that was not good, and you thought it's normal. Maybe it wasn't until you got out in the world that you realized this is not the best way to operate. And yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me like the whole system is what's flawed. Like, the parents shouldn't just bless one child, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and maybe the whole story again, like, is somehow pointing to Jesus, because like the old way is not right. It's not just about favoring one person. It's everyone gets it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the system of favoritism sets up all of the evil and the cheating and the
Yeah.
trying to get ahead.
Which didn't happen from generation to generation in the story here,
Yeah.
which we'll see. But I think it's kind of a funny thing, because not that many years ago, Marie's grandpa came over here from Norway, and he was the oldest one, and it was really odd because he was supposed to get the farm. Because he was the old one, the same thing as the story, get the property. I mean, how long did that go after Jesus, after this deal, I mean, it was normal.
All my Scandinavian descendants, or ancestors were not oldest.
We're what?
Not oldest, and
Yeah.
that's why they came here.
Yeah, oh, I got it, yeah.
Or they
Yeah.
did subdivide the farm, it would get so small you couldn't use it anymore.
Right, that's why they didn't do it.
Yes, you're reminding me of that. I think there are a lot of Norwegians and Scandinavians who came to America because they had nothing to inherit, so they had nothing
Sure.
left.
Drew's case was my great-great-grandmother Britta. And, as a girl, she wasn't inherit anything anyway, but when her dad died, before he died, he made the eldest son promise he was going to look after his mother and his sisters until they were married, and obviously the mother for the rest of her life. But his dad died, and he immediately reneged on that. He did take care of the mother, but he kicked all the girls out.
Oh.
So I through a roundabout route and a bunch of indignities, she wound up a mail-order bride in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it was quite a fair there. They would have loved to have met her.
Did it work?
It ended up good.
Okay, wow. But not to say
Every
that's
single
good.
picture of her, she's got a pipe in her mouth.
A pipe in
very
her
nice
mouth.
woman.
Nice, that's great.
Hmm.
And all the tobacco she could smoke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lived
Yeah.
to the old age just like that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think that part of the system was sort of unquestioned, that it feels odd for us
Yeah.
that the situation would even be set up that way. But I'm sure for the people who were telling the story, they were just like, wow, yeah. Well, it's a normal setup, but then they just went a strange direction with it, Rebecca and Jacob did, and that would be infuriating, I'm sure. They had a different level of emotion in hearing the story. I can imagine. I mean, Jacob's not a very likable character.
No.
No. I mean, really the whole time. I remember reading about the whole Joseph and getting a whole new insight of like, what did Jacob do to those boys? That he constantly favored Joseph, and what did he do to Joseph? Like, it was just sort of this aha moment, because I'm so used to sort of, I knew the biblical characters were imperfect, but I was still sort of thinking, oh, they had great faith in the midst of it, and they still mostly did good, right? Well,
Yeah.
maybe not.
I mean, I so frequently looking at the character of Jacob at the beginning of his story, and this cheating aspect
Mm-hmm.
to the point where he treated Joseph with such favoritism, and then ultimately sends his kids directly after Joseph was sent off to slavery, and then ultimately winds up higher in the hierarchy of the Egyptian government, and then sends his kids off to look for food during the famine. It's like, why is Jacob so lauded in our faith so often? We talk about the God of Jacob and such, and it's like, Jacob really was, this Jacob was a jerk.
Yeah.
It's like I had a wiffle ball bat. I was going, all the time.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
Or is that church basically personifying with Jacob, saying, yeah, we're not perfect, and neither was he, and yet he did look with favor on him to take care of him and his family during this tragic famine that ultimately came to pass. But because we never hear about what happened to Esau after this whole cheating aspect. The story follows Jacob the whole time, and Esau is sort of.
We do get little bits and pieces that he did okay. Like he married, he ended up having a lot, so that when Esau's going to meet Jacob years later, he's practically got an army. And so that says something, like, because things are so tribal. So he obviously married, had lots of kids, and that all is his tribe. So that proves his success. If you have this whole army of family behind you and all your servants and their family and everything, man, you're wealthy, and all your flocks.
I thought it was interesting when you said cheated somebody with favoritism. When we favor somebody, are we really cheating that person? Both sides. Any favoritism, as we see that in our whole society. What good are we if when we just have somebody give them stuff and make that advantage? All we do is turn them into monsters, people that believe that they deserve to have this stuff. You know, it's
And
weird.
And even if they're grateful for what they've received, they keep receiving things as handouts. They never learn to take care of themselves, such that when they've used up all that has been given to them, they don't have the skills or the wherewithal to know how to get more of what they need, and they end up like some of these. You hear some of these stories from people who won the lottery, and they use up all that money, and then they wind up destitute because they fail to think about saving some away and investing it, and they didn't know how to provide for themselves.
Yeah. It's sometimes the child that gets the least really receives the most because they have to use their skills. You know, and so they have to learn how to fend for themselves, and they learn how to use those. It's so hard to know what's a blessing and what isn't a blessing. As a person individually, God gives us our God-given everything, our God-given skills, and then with prayer and everything else, you hope to overextend on your God-given skills. And then God can even flourish those God-given skills even more through Him and trust in Him. Where'd that go? Sorry.
I'm kind of just reading back a little bit to get more of this story, and it could be that she was driven. I mean, the Lord said to her that the elder shall serve the younger. So like it was prophesying before they were even born. So maybe she thought that she needed to help that along or make that happen.
That's a good point too.
I was also noticing right before chapter 27 says that Esau married a couple of Hittites, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So he's kind of resenting them by that time.
Yeah.
It also means that I tend to think of Esau and Jacob as being like teenagers, but they're obviously not.
That's
So
true.
it's quite a bit
He's
later.
over 40.
He's 40.
Yeah.
So Jacob should be on his own by now.
It's
Or if he is,
interesting.
and they just left that. They leave out a lot of details and things because,
That's got to fit in this.
it's got to fit. And writing was a lot more expensive than it is now.
And tedious.
40. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Because actually, that should be kind of the old people's life expectancy at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Jacob was 40?
It says Esau.
Yeah, they
So
were
Jacob
twins.
probably just
They're
30.
twins.
Yeah.
When Esau was 40
that's
years
right.
old, he married
Yeah.
Judith.
And
And that's why he
Isaac
married
was 60 years old when they were born. So if
They were
they're 40, Isaac's 100.
Yeah.
No wonder
Yeah.
his eyes were dim.
Age is a little funny in this part of the Bible.
Okay.
You know,
It's
it's
age. A lot of these stories is a bit like the fish I caught. And
It,
it's a
it
little
kind of
Great.
is. It kind of is, and it's sort of like the more important you are, the older you lived.
Yeah.
So when they say someone, Noah was 200 when the
Yeah.
flood came
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
like-
I mean, people have really tried hard to justify saying, well, before the flood, the world was different and the atmosphere was different. You could live longer, or maybe the month was a year. Who knows? But the best explanation I heard is if you were an important figure, they gave you age as a way of reverence. So,
That's interesting. I've
was-
never heard that before. That's great.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, any sociological evidence we have around the world is that when a young girl is of age, she's married to a guy when he's of age, and maybe he needs to work it up enough to get some money and crops, but usually it's not too old.
Yeah.
and people started families younger because you had to.
Uh-huh.
You know, you didn't know what was going to happen. You had to get going. So, I mean, chances are they were younger,
Yeah.
much
40
younger
seems
than
a little
40.
late.
Seems a little old because Jacob's not married yet. He meets Rachel and Leah, neither of whom are married. And for women, they would have been younger.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
You get to 20 and they're like, what's wrong with you?
exactly.
They get
Exactly.
very scary.
Yeah. Married scary young, especially since Leah goes on to have 11 children.
Oh, yeah.
So
I did get
that's
started early.
you're not 40 when you start that process. So. Should we move to chapter 28, verse 10? We can just do 10 through the end of that chapter. This is Jacob's ladder, as we like to say. So would someone like to read verse 10 to the end of the chapter?
Oh, good. So that's 28:10. Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran. He came to a certain place and stayed there for the night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. And he dreamed that there was a ladder set upon the earth, the top of which reaching to the heavens, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And the Lord stood beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring, and your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth. And you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your offspring. Know that I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised to you. Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid, and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So Jacob rose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put under his head, and set it up for a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. And he called the place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give 1/10 to you.
So just notice that at the end, that God says, I'll be with you and I'll do these things for you. And he said, okay, but if you'll be with me and you'll do all these things for me, then you will be my God.
I know.
So-
Additional.
Yeah, even now he's in the face of meeting God. He's bargaining,
Yeah, bargaining and trying to set up his deal.
trying to get his deal going.
And
So
he's going to give God money.
yeah, I will give
If you
you.
do it right.
I will give you. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
Just sweeten the deal a little bit, make sure
Yeah.
he gets it.
yeah.
That's what God needs is a little money.
A little bargain, and it could have been crops or
Sure.
something as a
Sure.
burnt offering, but yeah.
Everything he does,
It's just deeply ingrained in him. It's like work the system,
Yeah.
because he's got to be that excellent deal maker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's grown up having to
Yes.
finagle everything. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either by lying, cheating, or swindling, or making a deal.
Yeah.
Working that art of a deal.
Yeah.
So this is like a lifelong lesson in learning to trust.
Sure, and
Yeah.
you can't even really blame him at all.
True.
I mean, at all. This is it's a way of life.
Yeah.
This is what he's taught.
Yeah. It worked out somewhat well for him. I mean, he ended up being successful. It's interesting how, I'm just having a thought here. We're taught a way of operating in the world to get by. And sometimes we do that successfully, but we still feel empty. And Jacob learned to trick and work the system, but we just discussed all the problems in his family that lay in his wake, right? And I wonder about that with, people who are taught, you need to do this or be this, you have to get this degree, you have to have this job, you have to earn this much money, and you have to, operate in this certain way in order to make it in this culture. And maybe the messages are different for being a man or woman, I don't know. And so you may find yourself having succeeded or not succeeded, and still it may not be, well, what did I want? What's good for, what was good for my soul? What got harmed in the process? Who did I step on to get where I got? What did I neglect when I was working 80 hours a week trying to get the next promotion? I don't know. Questioning the system a little bit. I swear I had water. Okay.
Yes,
That's it.
Yeah,
That's the other side.
working with some of the youth in St. Paul, and I'll talk to somebody and they're selling drugs already at 15, 16 years old, and you kind of just like, why, or whatever the question is, and it's basically like there's no other road for me. Like, this is my life. Like, this is the options I have. And their parents are probably doing the same. And you can't. Well, what do your parents think? Well, they're the ones that taught me how to do it. Who are you smoking weed with? Well, my mom. It opens your eyes, because when you're not on that level and talking with them and looking broadly, it's like, how could they, or why do they, or can't they see that this will cause problems for their life? No, because that's not what they see. That's not the position they're in. And so coming from so many different places in life, and I'm sure that's true for the ultra wealthy, maybe they in their hearts don't want to swindle and do those kinds of things, but they see that, or whatever it is in their family, what they learn from their parents, and this is what you have to do
Parent pressure.
to get by or to succeed, or so.
If I don't do it, someone else will, so
Right.
why not me?
Yeah.
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 That is the reason that we are blessed to be after Jesus was born, because we have the example of what is right and what is wrong. We can always go to the New Testament and to follow Jesus in things. And we're blessed, and all people, all families, parents should say, don't look at me, look at Jesus. And that's it. Him. You go to him, you figure it out from there.
Because even us as parents are fallible, right? Like,
Oh,
we make mistakes, we do
absolutely.
the wrong,
Yeah.
we want to teach them to follow Jesus, but we don't always do that by example. Yeah.
Right. You're right. I mean, who are we to say that our way we interpret Jesus is correct? And that's something that each person has to do for themselves. And that most of you can just keep having them go back to that and go into it, study it, feel it. Well, that's the best you can do for them.
I agree that we need to keep pointing to Jesus as the example, but at the same time, we have to be careful. We're fallible. Our kids are going to be
Yes.
fallible. And one of the things I've been trying to emphasize to my kids has been, you're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes too, and I try to point out sometimes when I catch myself make a mistake, or when I made a mistake in retrospect, and point out, okay, this is a mistake I made, and this is how I recovered from it. You miss a turn, don't be like this guy going from the left lane of the freeway, jigging it all the way across the freeway to make that exit, because that's way too risky, you can cause a crash. Instead, blow past that exit, go to the next exit, and go around. it'll cost you a few extra minutes, but if you cause a crash, that's going to cost you way more time if it doesn't cost you someone's life in the process. It's, life is full of mistakes, and the best thing you can do is recover from those mistakes gracefully.
Changing it slightly. It's interesting, like in book club or Tuesday Bible study or other places, to talk to people who aren't my generation necessarily and hear them share messages they heard as a child about all sorts of stuff, whether what your figure is supposed to be, your profession. I remember one person saying that she'd go over to her friend's house, they'd have coffee every afternoon, but then as soon as she saw her husband's car pull up, she'd jump up and have to, do you remember this story? She'd have to grab something to make it look like she was busy, to prove that even though women were staying home en masse, that was the norm, she felt like she couldn't ever just enjoy her time. She had to prove to her husband that she was working hard. Yeah, or she felt guilty, or who knows if it was from with her or from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, who
Absolutely.
knows? But we carry, sometimes we carry those things, right? I'm working on putting together more music for another CD that I've been working on for a while, and I thought that this cool photo shoot that would be fun for the cover, and you know what the first thought in my mind was? Well, I should try to lose a few pounds so I look better. Where's that? And then I thought, is that the kind of person I want to be? No. That's just, where did I get that? I don't know. And then I thought, no, I want to be the kind of person who, regardless of what I look like, loves myself and shows that to other women so that they have permission to love themselves as they are too, right?
Yep.
So I just find it interesting when we get these messages and they come out of our mouth and we're like, oh, I don't want to operate that way anymore. I've made sure that I never ever say anything about Lucy's body ever, right? Never commented on it except for you have dry skin, or we got to work on washing our hair, because our culture is so focused on size and shape and weight and this and everything like that. It can be Sunday school must be done.
Yeah. But you would want to talk to a child about a good eating habit, but not,
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No.
It's hygiene.
Hygiene,
Yeah.
yes.
It is.
We
Or
eat our-
hygiene or something like that. Sure.
Yeah, we eat our fruits and vegetables.
Because those are good lessons to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just things like that I'm noticing as a mom, as a woman, as everything. I'm just like,
Oh my gosh. We
Where does it
have
come
to be intentional.
yeah.
And why bother? I can't do anything right.
Yeah, right.
I give up. Thanks, Pastor. I give up.
Talking about those first formative years being up until the age of 7, it's like, oh man. All the mistakes we made during those years are going to haunt us haunt us and our kids for the rest of their lives.
I know.
The good thing is though, like, the goal is never perfection. And my mom, I remember telling me, she's like, do you have strong memories of how I used to yell at you kids all the time? It's like, you never yelled at us. She's like, oh no, I felt like I was yelling at you guys all the time. I don't remember that. Probably hers was like once a day she'd get really irritated about something we did and she'd raise her voice. But
And she feels guilty about it.
Yeah.
The rest of the day.
But everything else she did was so loving that for us, we knew we were loved. We knew this was just an anomaly, and so we forgot about it. And so I think that that's the grace of kids, is that when they do know they're loved, they're able to forgive so much of what we do and say, thank goodness. And,
Yeah.
but you got to give them something to work on when they're grown-ups, right?
Oh. Absolutely. That's why, but that's the job of a parent is to be able to show a child and teach them. If you don't do that to a child, then you've just been lazy and you're going to cause even more trouble.
Yeah.
You are.
More public trouble if you don't.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible. A parent that lets a kid run the situation, that's the worst.
One of the things that I've realized in the last, 10 years since I've gotten more serious with spirituality is being kind of my personal time with God, and then also God really showing me some of the parts of myself I didn't want to look at. And that's hard, but always in the afterwards when I actually do it, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. It's like the fear of looking at my imperfections is worse than the actual looking. Because especially when I wrap myself in all the love and the grace, if I'm coming at it thinking that if I don't do this, God's going to punish me, or, that I have to do this for God for some reason, when I wrap myself with all the grace and know that I'm loved either way, it really gives me a lot more confidence to go, I think I can see this about myself, and I think I can try to work on this now, and yeah.
And I think once we realize that there's no earning,
Yeah.
we can't earn it. We can let go of that part of it and just receive.
Yeah. Plus, to be honest, I feel like we're not ready for some things. I feel like God's just giving us nuggets our whole life. God's not going to give us the whole thing all at once and say, hey, this is everything you need to tackle before you get to the end of your life about everything. I would just...
And why do you think that is, Pastor? Because we have to continuously be going to Him all the time.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and we only have one place to keep going for our journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that keeps us falling down on our knees, going for it. Isn't my...
Because we can only handle so much at a time.
Yeah.
If He gave it all to us up front, it would overwhelm us and scare us away.
Oh yeah, life is scary, but he's also, he focuses on the bigger picture of, for humanity, we're, in general, is to love your neighbor, and as long as you keep following these basic rules of loving your neighbor and be stewards of this earth, and here's what the greater good is. You can just give these basic rules to all humanity and say, okay, go forth with this. How you do work with these rules, and how you work with these rules, and how you work with these rules. We're going to be a little bit different, but we all are striving in following these rules. Humanity will do great, and he can let his hands off the wheel and see how these kids grow up.
When you said just give it to us all at once, then what would we be? We'd be little gods.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You come to kindergarten the first day and your teacher says, let's talk about astrophysics and nuclear biology, and if all the kids go, great, well then they don't need to be in school, right?
Yeah.
And I think school is a very interesting metaphor for life, is that we all have our different personalities, our different backgrounds, different cultures, so we're going to learn, your life lessons are going to be maybe a little different than mine, and so on and so forth. And we just, we kind of pass one test, so to speak. I don't like I'm not saying God's testing us to like, I'm just saying life gives us tests.
Yep.
God
I follow.
helps us to give us the wisdom and the strength to go through them, and knows that we can be, when we figure something else out, it's good for us, makes us wiser, makes us more empathetic. God walks us through the craziness of life that's like, we test each other. We don't need God to test us, we test each other.
Yes, we do.
Just by living together. So,
Yes, and he allows us, if we, to be able to find these answers, as you said. And those answers should be so, the positive of that answer should always, under normal circumstances, should always exceed the negative of the problem that we had to overcome. Not always, because you can't say that to somebody who has the death of a child or something.
Oh, yeah.
Never
Yeah.
say that.
yeah.
But in the majority of those ones, it should be a learning experience.
Yeah, that's why I don't like that. God gives you what you can, doesn't give you more than you can handle, because I'm like,
I prefer
there's,
God makes you stronger than you think you are.
yeah. Well, and God gives you allies to walk you when you can't walk
Yep.
through the junk. Yeah.